Hello, everybody, and welcome back to part two of the Gretchen cards tier list. Here again, it's me, Puzzlebox, with my good friend Bobby bfine
That's me.
over here. That's him. So hopefully, assuming you guys watched part one, you know the drill. We're just gonna run through, talk about some of these cards that are generally playable in Gretchen, and talk about the reasons why or why you might not be playing these cards in your specific Gretchen lists. Because that's what we need. We need Gretchen content. There's not enough of that anywhere on the internet.
Preach.
Um, so we could just hop right in where we left off. Uh, Land auras is our next category for you guys here.
Yeah, this is the real. This is what people came to see us talk about the differences between these cards.
Yep. The differences between Sheltered Eyrie and New Horizons. Which one's better? It's a real real tough choice.
Yeah,
Um, so Landoras, we only have 15 of them, so they are like harder to come by than Land Untappers, which we'll get to a bit later, which tends to make them a bit more premium, just because we have less options. But on that topic, we will start on Blighted Burgeoning, I suppose, unless you want to do a different order and just talk
nah.
about
Yeah, I think we can
just
kind of just go through them in alphabetical order, but we'll probably end up grouping some together and skipping them. But I mean, so I guess we can talk about blighted burgeoning, fertile ground. These are all like slightly
eh,
different. But they're all we
yeah,
can talk about the differences. It's tricky. So there's I guess there's the auras that give your land the ability to tap for a trigger that gives it an additional mana when you
yeah,
tap it, and then there are the land auras that give the land an ability to tap for 2 mana. Um,
yeah.
and
Those are the general categories, and then
yeah,
sorted further by mana value.
yeah, mana
Um,
value, some other abilities here and there. Um, but yeah, like so, blighted burgeoning is the better ones are traditionally the ones that just allow it to tap for an additional and or give a trigger to give it an additional mana when you tap it for mana, because those stack unlike the ones that just give it ability to add two. So overall, we want to lean towards those. And blighted burgeoning is one of those. It's a 3 mana aura that when your chain lane is tapped, you can add one of any color, and it also has this extra ability tacked onto it where when it enters the battlefield, you incubate two. Um, which is cool.
yeah,
I like it. It's not like it. I think we both had it in like the A tier. It's basically gonna go in every Gretchen list. Um, because it's a land aura, because those are at a premium here, and the incubate two. You're never gonna kill anyone with the token, but there have been times where it's saved me. You know, from a lethal attack. It's saved me from an edict. Something, and like just having the random extra body there. Um, Whenever you want can really come in handy.
yeah. The Edict Protection is really nice. It's an artifact creature which comes up on rare occasion, and also if you are in one of those weird game states where a lot of your win conditions have been banished, as long as you're able to just capsize with buyback your blighted burgeoning over and over again, you can make infinite creatures pass the turn and punch everybody the next turn after you bounce their entire board state, so there's no way they can stop you.
Yeah.
Um, so this is a win condition. It's not a great one because it does take a turn cycle, but it doesn't require Archaeomancer loops or anything fancy like that. Um, once you've established the infinite. And yeah, the body comes up just in normal gameplay often enough that I like this in A tier. I think you you have to be on like only like I don't know, maybe 10 of the auras before you're cutting this, and I don't see much of a reason to be doing that. So,
Yeah, I think we're a little ways from it being outclassed, but hopefully someday. But yeah, I mean, next up we have Dawn's Reflection, and we can talk about Market Festival at the same time because they're effectively the same card.
yeah.
Um, these are similar to Blighted Burgeoning, but they give 2 additional mana. So In a deck that wants your lands tap for lots of mana, these do a ton of work. They both cost 4 mana, so they're kind of expensive, but I mean, these like single-handedly enable some combos or make it way easier to get to comboing than some of the other ones where you have to build up a couple of redundant or stacks of the added mana. Like the ability to just add 2 extra on one aura is huge, huge, huge. We can talk about overgrowth too, but it's a little different in that it's limited to green. But
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
I mean, 4 for 2 rate is better than 3 for 1, which is generally the expected rate on most of these land enchantments. So the rate's just better. We're a big mana deck, so we don't have too big of an issue paying 4 instead of 3. And wow, the added value of 1 extra mana every time you untap the land over the 3 mana enchantments is actually absurd. I think these cards are easy S tiers. I think you have to be playing the 4 mana enchantments.
yeah, I think Dawn's Reflection, Market Festival are auto includes, so like S tier, and then Overgrowth is probably like a step below. Like it's 3 mana for 2 extra mana, which is insane. But this deck is really blue hungry, or at least most builds are blue hungry. So to that extent, and you need multiple blue to truly go infinite. Um, so it's not the most desirable, but again, when you're just in the mid to late game, just like generating mana, activating Gretchen a ton, like Overgrowth is also really, really strong. So it's kind of just like the tier below the A tier. You'd have to have a really, really good reason not to run it, I think.
Yeah, the double green is really awkward, but it's still 2 mana on every untap for a 3 mana investment, which is just so high above rate that it's it's still really strong, even if it's not enabling freed lines
Yeah.
or alchemist lines. It still works with some of the other untappers, and it's just good value. So
Yeah. No, these are like the best ones to end up drawing. So, um, other than
depending on the
yeah,
hand, so yeah,
other than like Fertile Ground. So Fertile Ground's also up there in terms of like one of the better ones to draw. In terms of rate versus return. Um, like you were talking about, 4 mana for 2 is pretty good. So chop that in half. 2 for 1 is also really good and better than the bulk of the 3 mana for ones. It also has it's the trigger as opposed to the ability. Um, so it's really nice there. I mean, there's not really a lot. There's nothing fancy about Fertile Ground. It's just really, really strong. It's cheap.
there's one fancy thing, and that's the fact that it's the only 2 CMC target we have. So Muddle can tutor for Fertile
Yeah,
if you need a land enchantment. You can get to that through Muddle/Merchant Scroll. So that's like the one super unique thing about this. But obviously, it it's painful to have to do, but it does come up.
yeah,
Um, so I Fertile is an S tier for me.
yeah. It's an auto include for me too. So, next up, this one's a little different. So this is the first one that has the gives the land the ability to tap for mana, and it gives it the ability to tap for double green, which is something we just talked about is not the most desirable in this deck. Um, but Find the Path also, when it enters the battlefield, you venture into the dungeon. So while it's not the most impressive aura, similar to Blighted Burgeoning, when you're capsizing, it gives you a way to win the game because you can just venture through dungeons in some combination and get there. Um, if you have other things where you can gain life, you can go through the one where everyone loses life over time, and Find the Path will win you the game if you have infinite mana. So, um, other than outside of that, yeah, it's not the most exciting. I think I've played it just for ease of explaining combo lines sometimes. Um, and I think I'm on it right now, but it can go in or out of the deck. It's kind of in that like C tier where it's like a tech choice. It's not gonna make or break the deck. Um,
Yeah,
and
I've
it's
played it before, but I'm not a big fan.
yeah,
Um,
it's
it
not
helps in like I played it in my version that was built to play against cEDH decks, because being able to venture as not being like a cast is helpful. And I was also playing Secret Door,
Yeah.
as like a way to win the game without casting spells to play around stacks pieces.
Yeah.
So it's nice there. I don't like it very much. I don't play it, but it does still have that tech application. And if you want to play all 15 land auras, you're still going to be playing it. So I don't think it can go below C, but
Yeah.
I definitely put it in C tier.
Yeah. Not great, but there's some merit to it. So, next up, Gift of Paradise. I mean, we can really lump this in with Sheltered Airy, Nature's
Yeah,
Embrace.
they're all about the same in terms of playability, I would say.
Yeah, these three all are the ones that give your land the ability to tap for 2 mana of any one color. Um, so, uh, Gift of Paradise has the
Oh,
added
and New
benefit.
Horizons.
Well, we can talk about there's also
But
Grafted
yeah,
Growth and New Horizons too. Um, so Gift of Paradise, its added benefit is it gains you 3 life. Grafted Growth in New Horizons put a +1/+1 counter on a creature, which has some applications for Vigilant Graft Mage enabling. Um, and then Nature's Embrace and Sheltered Area really don't offer much else. We're never going to be using Nature's Embrace on a creature, so the +2/+2 doesn't matter. And Sheltered Area just does not have any other text on it. So, um, yeah, like these are all okay, I guess is kind of where I'm at. How do you feel about them, Puzzle?
yeah. I mean, the ones that have no effect obviously are the worst enchantments we have access to, um, because they give the ability to the land, which doesn't stack, and they don't do anything else. They're still like C tier. If you want to play all the auras, you're going to be playing them. Um, so they're not unplayable by any means. But personally, I don't like playing more than two of the lands that of the land enchantments that give the ability. So generally, I'm playing Grafted Growth and New Horizons as my two of choice. Maybe Gift of Paradise if I'm not playing the Graph Mage package over one of those, um, because the 3 life does come up. But generally speaking, they're fine. They're like B tier. Um, they are notably worse than the other 3 mana options, unless you're playing the Graph Mage package, in which case the value goes up on the +1/+1 counter ones, obviously.
Yeah, if you're playing Graph Mage, those become auto includes. You have to play them, but yeah, they're not exciting. None of the cards in this category are particularly exciting. Um, we don't get to take advantage of like doubling up on these, so you want to spread these across different lands. The pro there is that it can diversify your lands in like the early to mid game where you're not loading up too heavy on one when people are trying to, maybe try to boomerang or sinkhole or whatever, mess with your lands. Um, but Weaver's decks will take all of them because they want to untap 2 lands, so they get to like actually take advantage of it in ways that Gretchen can't. So they're fine. You want to run a few of them, but you don't want to run too many that you end up having hands where you're just like, wow, I have 3 of these and no way to go infinite yet because I just don't have another aura that gives me 1 more mana. So
Yeah, if you're not playing any, you might be a little low on your land aura count right now. Um, until we get some more land enchantments that do this kind of thing, which we have seen they're willing to do because Blighted Burgeoning came out, what, like last year?
yeah, but it's
Um,
recent, or I guess it was end of
and
2023.
Nature's Embrace was recent too, I think, but
Yeah,
obviously a much worse one.
yeah,
So we're still getting them,
yeah,
but
yeah. We also have Glittering Frost, which kind of lumping it in with Verdant Haven here for the sake of combining things that are similar enough. Um, so these, we look at the last one. Those were the set of 3 mana ones that give the ability. These are the set of 3 mana ones that give the trigger. Um, you know, like Blighted Burgeoning did. Glittering Frost is neat because it makes the land a snow land. And we're already playing snow basics, but this has come up multiple times where I've made Simic Growth Chamber a snow land, which
yeah,
matters for our various untappers that only target snow lands. So it's huge because now all of a sudden that land's tapping for 3 mana, which is just great and exactly what we want to be doing here. And then Verdant Haven, again, it just gives you an extra 2 life, which matters here and there. and it's just otherwise like okay. Like Glittering Frost is, I think, better because of the like unique application of the, or I guess the unique feature of making Simic Growth Chamber specifically a snowland. Um, but both are solid. Glittering Frost probably slightly better than Verdant Haven, but I think I've basically always played both, and will probably always play both until we just get a lot more of these.
I'd agree. Glittering Frost also snow is relevant on like any of your non-basics,
Yeah,
but the non-snow dual land is also nice to turn into a snow land
yeah,
for high tide lines. So, and if you have a Utopia sprawl on it, things like that, like the the turning lands into snow effect is actually pretty relevant
yeah,
a decent chunk of the time. So, Glittering Frost is probably an A tier for me. Burning Haven, the life gain's nice, but it's not as good as Glittering Frost, so I'd put it in B tier. But
yep,
I'm still playing it like all the time.
yeah. That sounds like exactly where I put them too. So, and then rounding it out, we have two more to talk about. So we talked about all these 3 mana ones already. Utopia Sprawl, which you just mentioned. So this is one of like the best ones in the deck, probably. It enables. It's part of what enables the turn to Magic Christmas Land hand. Um, yeah, I mean 1 mana. You do have to have a forest. But then it gives it the ability to tap for one of whatever color you choose. Most often it's going to be blue, um, just because it's already going on a forest.
Mm-hmm.
But 1 mana for 1 mana. So the turn if you're casting this anytime after turn one, it's effectively free because it's paying for itself and it's not slowing you down from anything else you're doing. Um, I mean, it's just an insane value.
Yeah, yeah. No, the 1 mana enchantments are insane, and Wild Growth is less restrictive, being the same as Utopia Sprawl, but it only generates a green. However, it doesn't have to go on a forest, so
Yeah,
you're able to put it on your non-basics, or if you are only generating green through like another land enchantment because you don't have a forest, it still gets you that additional green.
yeah,
Um, so it's still really good. It's still effectively free, and then netting you mana every time after. Um, yeah, both of the 1 mana enchantments are S tier for me. Like,
yeah.
there's no way you're ever cutting these.
Yeah, you got to play them. I mean, they're played in a lot of other like cDH applications. They're played in lots of green decks. They're just so powerful, even outside of a deck that's centered around making your lands tap for 1 billion mana. So naturally, they're even better here. So, but yeah, I think that's it for Land Auras. Nothing too fancy, nothing crazy to talk about. Just a necessary evil with what we're trying to do. So,
Yep.
um, which
Counterpart time.
yeah,
Yay.
which ties directly into the land untappers part of the deck. So, um, and then we start off with probably the best one, honestly, in Arbor Elf. So, talk about Arbor
Yeah.
Elf.
If not the best one, the second best one. Um, just being 1 mana is really nice. Untapping only forests can be restrictive on occasion if you brick pretty bad, but um, still really strong. It can't untap Simic Growth Chamber, is like the bad part on Arbor Elf.
Yeah,
You can't do that. You can't untap islands if your hand is a non-basic and 2 islands, you can cast the Arbor Elf but can't untap anything with it, and that feels bad.
yeah,
But it being 1 mana makes it premium. It's also required for your turn two win line,
yeah.
which I've been playing this deck a long time, and I've attempted the turn two win once, and I got stopped by 2 pieces of interaction.
Yeah,
But that aside, like I win turn three with this card a
yeah,
lot. Um, it's just so good. The value that it gets you starting from turn two onward is so good.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like the Utopia Sprawl Wild Growth thing. Like, if you just get to do something on turn one, the amount of added advantage you have just over the course of the game is absurd. It just snowballs out of hand so quickly. So, yeah, this is, I mean, about as clear as of an S tier card as you can get in this deck. Um,
Yeah.
it's just good.
Um,
So,
do you want to talk about the 2 mana ones next?
yeah, so
Um,
we can talk about the 2 mana ones. So here we're talking about Portent Tracker, Voyaging Satyr, and then Rhyme Tender and Sculptor of Winter 2. Um,
and kind of Rhymewind Task
and
Mage.
yeah, and sort of
We can
Rhyme with Task
we can
Mage.
separate that one off though. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the next step up in line in terms of CMC, these all, they have various bodies that, some of them have two toughness, some of them have one.
Yeah. The
Um,
snow ones are 2/2s.
yeah.
And then there's a 1/1 and a 1/2.
Yeah. So Portent Tracker and Voyaging Satyr, they have no restrictions on what land you untap. The secondary text on Portent Tracker just doesn't matter for our format. There are no battles, nothing to worry about there. And then Sculptor of Winter and Rhyme Tender have the added text of just it has to target a snow permanent, which not a huge deal, but does come up like we talked about previously here and there. Rhyme Wind Task Mage is a little bit different. It does have cost of mana to activate, and it has a restriction that can only be used if you have 4 more snow permanents, but it also lets you tap things, so it has a little more flexibility there. But these are like the two CMC land untappers that you could see, that you could play in the deck. I think, you know, Portent Tracker and Voyaging Satyr are like slightly better than Rhyme Tender and Sculptor Winter, but overall they're all fairly similar in terms of power level. And then Rhyme Wind Task Mage is just a good chunk lower than that. The restriction of having to have 4 snow permanents is significant. And the fact that, it costs a mana to activate is huge. The flexibility and I know in earlier versions we were playing this because it was before a lot of these newer ones got printed. So the flexibility of being able to tap things is cool. But you're not getting the value as far as the untap until you've suited up a land a little heavier, which has
Yeah.
some
I
downside.
mean, he just doesn't do much early game if you don't have a land enchantment. Whereas all of your other untappers that don't cost mana are still netting you at least 1 mana every turn. They're at least mana dorks. Rhymewind is not, because you have to meet that for snow permanent to even activate him. Not to mention he cost 1.
Yeah.
So I would say Rhymewind is like a C tier, just because he has too many hoops to jump through, but he does still have the tech application of being able to tap things down, which comes up.
And he's a
Um,
wizard, which is also worth
and
mentioning.
yeah, he's a wizard, which is very relevant because we only have 2 of those
Yeah.
in our untapper slots.
But yeah.
And yeah, like the 1 mana is just so restrictive as an activation cost, but still playable. If you want to play him, especially, I think the main reason is for that wizard target. Um, Still playable. The others I think are S tier. Like
Yeah.
getting this effect at 2 mana is insane. Same as like Fertile Ground for the land enchantment. Our average rate, our expected rate for an untapper is 3 mana. Um, and getting it at 2 is really, really good.
Yeah. No, I don't know a world where you wouldn't be playing these. They're all too good to not play. Essentially, people always one of the things people always talk about with Gretchen is, do you really need the snows? And this is the if not the, I mean, this and Weavers are like the decks in the format that, like, you really, really, really can't skimp out on the snowlands because these are just too crucial of a game piece
Yeah,
for what the
and
deck's
snows
doing.
have been getting cheaper, which is nice.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. But yeah, kind of moving up next, in CMC order, we have the 3 mana untappers. And like you said, this is kind of like the going rate for untappers anymore, it seems, or more often than not. So here we have Blossom Dryad, we have Lay Druid, we have Juniper Order Druid, and we have Clever Conjurer too. We can talk about Crows and Restore,
yeah, I mean it's
and
close enough.
Vizier. So yeah, there's a chunk here. and again, varying power toughness is some are a little better at blocking than others. Looking at Clever Conjure being a 2/3, but overall these are kind of just like the you gotta play them because we need the numbers types of cards. Blossom Dry doesn't have anything spectacular going for it. Clever Conjurer is a wizard, but you can only
It's the
activate it as a
only.
sorcery, um,
Yeah.
which is a bummer. Juniper or Druid, again, nothing cool there. Crows and Restorer is different. Um, Sometimes, I guess.
Rarely, but it does come up
Yeah.
in my experience.
Yeah. Yeah, Crows and Restorer has a threshold ability where if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you can actually untap up to 3 lands. So now it's doing a better Leyweaver impression. I don't know. I mean, we've
Obviously insane, but
yeah. If you get it going, it's sweet. But you and I have talked about this a lot, where that isn't coming up a lot in this deck, just due to the nature of how it works. We're not casting lots of spells. We're not putting lots of stuff in the yard. So threshold is kind of hard to get going in this deck, in most of the like more common variants of the deck at least. Um,
mhm.
so sometimes it's a nice little treat on top, but oftentimes it ends up just being another like lay druid or juniper order druid. Um, Lay
It's
druid,
got 2 toughness though, which makes it
sure,
better than Juniper and Lay
sure, it
automatically.
is it is slightly better in that regard. And then the last one is Vizier. It's cool because it has that cycling ability where you can cycle it to untap. It's come up a few times on combo terms where someone's trying to stop me. In response, you can cycle it, draw a card, and untap my guy to go off in response again, like over top.
And
And
it's
it's a
got the
1/3.
3 but.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it's also any permanent,
yeah,
which basically never comes up, but theoretically could come up in politics and all that jazz if you really needed to.
yeah,
But honestly, you don't need much politicking skill on Gretchen
yeah.
in that
Because
aspect. So
yeah. So all these are good. They're all definitely playable. Of them, of the 3 mana ones specifically, Crows and Restore is, I think, pretty clearly the best of the bunch.
I think Vizier is better. Um,
Okay,
I I think the ability to discard it to draw a card and untap a permanent comes up more than the threshold, and the
that's
three
fair.
bet comes up more as a blocker than the two. So I think Vizier is a bit better. But either way, I think all the 3 drops are in like A tier. Like you have to play them. It's the going rate.
Yeah, I,
None of
I,
them are like so much better that it puts them in S tier, or so much worse that it puts them in a lower tier.
yeah, I think I have Crows and Restore slightly higher than Vizier, but I think they're really close. I mean, I think those two are like a good chunk better than the others, in terms of 3 drops. But yeah, I mean, they're all good. I think in our thing we have Restore in S tier, and then Vizier in
Yeah,
A tier.
Restore does enable like 1 card quote
Yeah,
unquote combos that the others don't potentially. So it does still have that extra winning
yeah.
aspect to it. So
But yeah, there's none of them are like below like they're all in A tier. Like
yeah,
there's not really downside to any of them except for Clever Conjurer, but it almost makes up for it because it's a wizard. So
it absolutely makes it, especially if you're not playing Rhymewind. Like there are so many times where I'm like, well, I guess I'm wizard cycling,
yeah,
and I guess I'm getting Clever Conjure because I need an untapper. And as much as it pains me that this is
mm,
the only one we got, this is the one we got, and I tutor this card a lot.
yeah. So yeah, these cards they're good. You got to play them, and there's no reason not to. They're just solid. Um, Next up, Cloud of Fairies, and in a similar vein, Peregrine Drake. Where where do you stand on those cards?
These cards suck. Um, like,
In Gretchen.
yeah, in Gretchen. The thing about the Flicker on tappers is that you have to see the Flicker on tapper as well as the Flicker spell as well as the Archaeomancer to really get this to line up. And the only piece that we have good redundancy for in that line is the Archaeomancer effects. Not to mention, these cards are functionally more like rituals than mana dorks, whereas all of our land untappers that just sit on the board and give us value turn over turn are playing more towards the game plan that at least our Gretchen builds are built towards, which is just sitting there accruing value until there is literally no chance of us losing the game. Um, so I don't like them. They're a one-time effect, and to win the game, you need a ghostly flicker or displace alongside an Archaeomancer effect, and it's just not what the deck wants to be doing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I've played against versions that splash this combo. It'll get there sometimes, but again, it just doesn't line up with what the rest of the deck is doing. And one of the biggest strengths of this deck is there's so much redundancy in so many of the pieces. Going down this rabbit hole, you're bottlenecked on the flicker and on this guy. These land on tapper on ETB guys. So I'm not super excited about them. I don't think they're particularly worth playing either. They're good combo. You know, I don't hate the flicker combo. I just don't think Gretchen's a home for it, basically. So,
At
um,
least Cloud of Fairies like actually works in this deck,
yeah,
whereas most other decks need exactly High Tide to make Cloud of Fairies work for that combo. So
yeah,
there is that at least, but
yeah. It's just we have just better things we can be doing essentially. So,
mhm.
um, but yeah. So then next up, we can talk
Land
about
animators.
yeah, we can kind of talk about land animators here. So there's Harmonious Emergence, there's Hydroform, there's Life Spark Spellbomb, there's also Wind Zendikon, which we didn't include in this, but and there's several other spells that do kind of the same thing as all
Yeah,
these, where um, basically the goal is to play something that animates your land that taps for a bunch of mana, and rather than going through the hoop of having a land untapper, you just put the Freed from the Real on the land itself and untap it and go to town. um, Harmonious Emergence is an aura, so is that going for it? And if it's destroyed, um, instead you can ditch it to make it indestructible, which is cool. Because making your land a dude makes it more vulnerable than any other time, and that's normally the lands are pretty safe. People aren't running too many spells that can deal with a land that's suited up. There are some, but generally speaking, your lands are fairly safe, all things considered. But once you make it a dude, that changes everything. Um, so it's kind of cool there that it helps protect against some of that, um, but it's kind of at a steep cost. 4 mana. Hydroform is a blue-green instant that turns into a 3/3 until end of turn, and then Life Spark Spellbomb, 1 mana artifact that makes it into a 3/3 until end of turn if you use the first ability. Um,
yeah.
we've we've talked about these a lot over time, and we've like for a while the deck didn't run. At least you and I didn't run any of these for a long time. Any of these land animators, with the idea that opening your lands up to creature removal and like the blowout of losing all your land arts you've built up on that land is brutal. It's just absolutely brutal. Um, but over time, and as Gretchen's kind of gained notoriety, having a land untapper stick around is also a problem. And so the good thing about these is you can let your land sit and play and not have an untapper, but you can still pull off a win without having to worry about having a land untapper survive a turn signal because you can a turn cycle because you just animate it and then go to town right away. And kind of you can catch a lot of people off guard.
Yeah, yeah. Gretchen's kind of been noticed, to say the least. But Gretchen typically has a summoning sickness issue, which is the main thing that holds it back from just winning the game out of nowhere. And these solve that issue. But yeah, like you mentioned, especially Hydroform and Life Spark, they make lands into boltable creatures, which is problematic if you get hit with creature removal. Because, like, if your untapper gets hit with removal in response to your Freed, yeah, you lose your Freed and your untapper, but you still have your land that taps for 3, 4, whatever mana, right? Um, you can still come back from that game pretty easily. If you lose your land, 3 land enchantments, and Freed from the Real,
It's a huge setback.
good luck.
Yeah.
So these cards are still risky, so I struggle to put them above B tier, and Harmonious is just like, ugh, 4 mana is a lot. It does make it pretty much unkillable, but 4 mana is a lot. So I'd probably leave it in C tier. Like,
Yeah.
you can still play it. It's searchable, which is cool because that one's an aura. And Hydroform's an instant, so it's
Yeah,
searchable
they're
with
all various
Merchant
levels.
Scroll, Life Spark searchable with Trinket Mage. Like, they're all
Daisy Scroll.
searchable.
Yeah, and they're nice to have as like a one, maybe a second copy of in the deck anymore. It's just like an out when you're in a pod where you're just never ever gonna untap with an untapper. It feels like you don't want to go
Yeah,
too heavy on them because then you're just stuck, and then people are gonna be way more like people probably a little more wary, and like if they see one go and then they're gonna be waiting for the next one, and if that's all you're doing and you're not committing a lot of untappers, people rarely think you're just like completely out of the game when you're playing Gretchen, because you rarely are just out of the game. But they're a nice tool to have. They're not the most unexpected anymore, but they're still like I think one of is basically required for the deck if you're playing it, just to have that out. And you can really pick any of them. I don't think there's, you know, depending on what other packages you're playing, will probably shape which one it fits best for you. But they can all be tutorable depending on what you want to how you want to shape the rest of your deck. So
yeah. I think generally I like Hydroform the best.
same.
Um, just because like Merchant Scroll feels a little awkward sometimes in this deck. Um, so having the the search target of Hydroform to like try to win the game on the spot with Merchant Scroll seems pretty nice to me.
Yeah.
And it's a muddle target which comes up, but yeah, these cards also don't do anything on their own, which is the other thing like going against them.
Yeah. Except I mean, Life Spectral Bomb's a 2 mana cycle effectively if you're
Yeah,
doing
too
nothing
many
else.
cantrip if you're
But
down real bad.
but if you're doing
But
that, you're already in a bad spot. So, but yeah. So that's those. Next up, this card's kind of unique in what it does. Um, Oasis Ritualist.
yeah,
Um,
so this is not a land untapper per se, but it's like trying to imitate the same effect. But it doesn't require land enchantments. Um, is the nice thing about it, right? And so I guess if you guys don't know, it's a 4 mana for a 2/4 that is just a mana dork. Taps to add 1 mana of any color, but you can also choose to tap and exert it so it doesn't untap during your next untap step to add 2 mana of any one color.
yeah, and so
So yeah,
with that, it goes infinite with Freed from the Real. So it doesn't care about the next time it untaps, only during the next untap step. So you can pay a blue with Freed if you enchant it with Freed from the Real, untap it, make infinite blue, then make infinite whatever, go to town. And so yeah, I mean it's cool. It only combos with the one copy of Freed we have, so it's an A plus B combo, but we don't have redundancy for the A or B in this situation really. Um, and it's expensive for what it's doing. Like it's a 2/4, that's cool, but a 4 mana dork is just not what we want to be doing in the deck otherwise. So it's just not.
yeah,
I think it's in D tier. I've played it in other decks that are playing Freed and like where like the idea is just combo with just Freed. But this deck isn't trying to do that. It's trying to maximize the ways it can go infinite with any of the pieces. So this just doesn't make the cut for me, I don't think.
yeah, and it's less searchable than even the flicker combo.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, not a fan.
Yeah. Next up, we talked about some of the other ones. Quirion Ranger. I think you have a lot more experience playing with this than I do. I haven't tinkered with it much at all. I've seen, I think, I know Jonathan's been, I think, one of the people who's played with it most in Gretchen.
Mhm.
I know you've, messed with it too. How do you feel about Query Ranger?
So Kyrian Ranger is a card that in Gretchen has a very high floor, or sorry, a very high ceiling, but a very low floor. Um, this card is obviously really insane whenever you are like fully online with a land that taps for. Generally, like this card's insane if you have a land that taps for three, plus a forest, because you get to bounce the for. You also have to have another untapper is like the big issue. So this card takes a lot to really get going. But in that ideal game state, you're floating 4 mana with your forest plus land. You're untapping the land that taps for three, bouncing the forest to untap your dude, and activating Gretchen to put that forest back into play. Um, so you're resetting your game state but drawing a card. And you get to do that once each turn, which means you can do it during your opponent's turns. And it's like a pseudo Seedborn Muse, but it takes a lot of setup. Um, it requires it and an untapper to stick, and for you to have that land going. Uh, it's also an elf, so it's theoretically searchable if you're playing elf tutors, but Gretchen generally doesn't play it.
Yeah.
And it looks like a one mana like turn one play, but it's not, because it requires so much setup. So it's like playable, but you have to really be leaning towards like that turbo style Gretchen for this card to be worth playing, in my opinion. It definitely can work. So it's like B tier, C tier, depending on your build, maybe. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of it in the current builds of Gretchen that
Yeah.
I play.
Yeah. I think when I've seen it, the times I've seen it, it's been insane, with the setup going. But like you said, that getting that setup is not a given at all anymore with the kind of target Gretchen has on her head. And just like, it would probably eat, removal itself a lot too. So even if it does get into play, you're not guaranteed to get the value out of it, which is fine. But yeah, I think kind of B is a good place where, it's definitely worth playing, but like you said, in kind of a more turbo oriented or like all in, let's do this ASAP kind of variant. So, um, yeah, and I think the last one we have that we haven't talked about is, we talked about Arbor Elf maybe being the best. This is probably the other one that is in that conversation, and that's Stone Cedar Hierophant.
Yeah, I mean, this is the card that has the biggest target on it, like ever. Um, 4 mana, 1/1. So, pretty bad stats for the cost. Whenever a land comes into play under your control, he untaps himself, and he is just a land untapper. So, given the fact that Gretchen's ability can put lands from your hand into the battlefield, and trigger your Stone Cedar to untap, this card goes insane. Once again, same as Kyrian Ranger. Like, if you have a land that taps for three or four, anytime you're drawing lands with Gretchen, it's basically free activations. Or maybe even netting you mana off of Gretchen activations. Uh, the ceiling is so high on this card. If you ever untap with this card and have a land that taps for 2 mana, you might as well have won the game.
Yeah,
It's insane.
I mean, it alone has like a whole like it changes so many of the combo lines in so many favorable ways. It's so much easier to go off with Oboe Breeze Color. You can go off without an untap ability, like an untapper with Simic Growth Chamber if you have a land that's suited up enough. Like,
Yeah,
there's so much you can do with this card. It is 4 mana. It is gonna get people scared, or it should. I've definitely, of the times I've cast it, if I've ever gotten to untap, I think I've won well over 90% of those games. But in times I've cast it, it's also not resolved and or being killed a lot more than I've had those chances to untap with it. So um, it's
Which,
insane.
fair enough.
Yeah,
Like,
which
I
is
don't know.
deserved, 100%. But
It's kind of like a Paragon Drake that's a mana cheaper, but has to actually survive an entire turn cycle.
yeah.
Is the way I see it.
But yeah, this is. I mean, I think it's another really easy like S tier card. It's so good. It enables so many crazy things in the deck. And yeah, I mean, you're probably not gonna get to do those super frequently, given its cost and just scariness. But when you do get to untap with it, it's gonna get out of hand. And that's the perfect. I mean,
And it's just fun.
yeah,
Like, it's so fun.
yeah.
But
But it's a sweet one. So yeah, I think that covers our land untappers pretty well. Nothing
on
too
to
crazy, but
the trouble
miscellaneous.
category.
Yeah. So this category we had. I know we talked about it when we were trying to put together. It kind of covers a lot of bases, and we weren't sure how to like label some of these. You know, we could get into like super granular categories and like they have one or two cards, but that seems like a waste of time to make a separate category for it. So we just kind of lumped all that stuff together. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah. Um, I guess
Archaeomancers.
yeah. So recursion wizards. We talked about flicker combo already. With Paragon Drake, Cloud of Fairies, Ghostly Flicker, Displace, all that fun stuff. Um, we play one, I think, is kind of where we're at. We play Archaeomancer. It's a wizard. It's tutorable. In our deck, that makes lots of lands that tap for lots of mana. Snap plus Archaeomancer is a real combo line. It's a combo line that dodges the summoning sickness issue while opening yourself up to the graveyard hate issue. So there's some trade off there. Um, but you know, Archaeomancer is easily the best of the bunch. You know, it's the cheapest. It's a wizard. Um, it's solid. Yeah, I think that's the only one I'm really excited about playing. You know, there's Salvager, Secrets, Shipwreck, Dowser, Scrivener, Mnemonic Wall. You know, there's a whole host of them now. But Archaeomancer is really like the only one I'm really interested in, and I'm really only interested in playing one of them.
Yeah, I want it to be searchable, so that pretty much takes wall out of the equation. And I want to be able to realistically play it in the mid game as a value piece. So for that reason, I like Archaeomancer over all the other 5-drop options. Um, I think it's an S tier because it makes so many combo lines like actually feasible. Um, it enables a lot, and it makes winning the game a lot easier. And it's still like a good value card. The number of games where I've like cycled step through to get Archaeomancer is totally acceptable. Um, I think it's a good card.
Yeah, I think it's good. If you want to play more, you could, but I think Archaeomancer is the one you should play. The rest are all just kind of like, you know,
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't
know,
see any reason. I don't
C, maybe D
like
tier.
casting them, so
Yeah,
I'd rather not play more than one.
yeah,
And you can still win the game without it. So yeah,
yeah,
one is fine.
yeah. Next up, crop rotation. Um, I'm not super high on this card. I think you were playing it a little longer than I was. Um,
Mhm.
what
Yeah,
what do you like about it?
I like this card because of its ability to get you exactly Simic Growth Chamber and or well, not and Simic Growth Chamber, or it gets you access to like Mystic Sanctuary, your Snow Duel. So it's just like your utility lands. Um, Specifically, Simic Growth Chamber is the biggest one though. Being able to do that, get a land back to your hand for Gretchen activations, or just having more land drops is really nice. I don't think it's necessary, and I think I'm completely off this card now. I still think
Yeah,
it's good. Um, it's an option, especially if you're playing some other tech lands, like if you're playing the desert as a win condition, things like that, it can come up. Instant speed ping off of desert to kill someone would be the funniest thing ever.
Yeah.
Uh, but I'd put it in like C tier. Like it's got applications. It's fine if you really want to like if your meta's really land destruction heavy for some reason, you could use it to like dodge land destruction and still get a positive, but I'd rather just play a counter spell if that were the case. So
Yeah.
like, it's fine.
Yeah. No, I think it's there's applications, but I'm not super excited about it anymore. I'm like you said, like they're cool things you can do with Mystic Sanctuary and Lush Oasis, but Simic Growth Chamber is the only land card that I'm eager to tutor up, and I don't know if I am so eager that I want to run a card that's essentially dedicated to it at this point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I used to be eager about it, but as we get more and more redundancy for combo pieces, it feels less necessary.
yeah,
Um,
but still, yeah, still completely solid. Still can be played. So um, next up, we have Dizzy Spell. I don't know if we want to talk about this and all the other tutors at the same time. We can.
yeah, we can. They all have different search targets that we can talk about, but
Yeah. So I guess we'll talk about Dizzy, Drift, and maybe Merchant Scroll here. So Dizzy Spell is kind of a weird one in terms of what it can tutor up. It's not the best. You can get High Tide, which is nice. You can get an Urban Burgeoning. You can get a Utopia Sprawl. You can get Arbor Elf. So you have some things you can get. You can go get a Dispel on the turn. You're gonna go for it. Um, it's solid, but it doesn't have any of like the go get you like your untapper, right? At least it didn't until recently. Maybe it does with this new card we'll talk about in a minute, but um, it's not the best of the tutors, but there's some cool stuff you can go get. So I kind of have it in like the C tier personally for Dizzy. Um,
yeah, I don't think I'm playing it currently because the search targets are kind of awkward.
yeah,
But
but
I mean,
any
yeah,
tutor is just going to be inherently powerful. Like or powerful enough, just the flexibility of it. And the 3 mana isn't too big of a burden for our deck, but um, yeah,
yeah, it's more the double blue pips that hurt more than anything.
yeah. Compare that to Drift of Phantasms, which is probably like the best tutor in our deck.
Yeah,
It goes and gets Freed from the Real or Galvanic Alchemist, or it gets Corrosion Restore. It gets a bunch of untappers. You get a bunch of land auras. Um,
yeah, it gets you access to anything you need. You
yeah,
need interaction, combo pieces, card draw,
yeah,
any drift gets you there,
yeah.
and it's castable. Like
An
if
O5
you
flying blocker is huge.
if you need to block and already have your combo, like you can cast drift. I
Yeah,
have no issue with that.
yeah. So this is again kind of like an auto include S tier. It's too good not to play. Um, and then Merchant Scroll is somewhere kind of in between. I think those two. Um, Merchant Scroll lets us go get any blue instant. We have High Tide, we have Snap, we have Capsize as far as like combo related ones. Hydroform too, to get around the haste problem or the summoning sickness problem. Gets a bunch of counter spells. Yeah, I mean, Merchant Scroll is just a really solid card. You talked about earlier when we were talking about Hydroform. Doesn't have anything that's like particularly like great to get, but has a bunch of like solid hits. So if there's, we've talked about whether or not it's even worth playing sometimes because of is the slot worth just like having flexibility over just playing some other card? Um, and probably,
Yeah,
but it's kind of like we really could use another like blue instant or two to really like push it over the edge to being like kind of an S tier card. Um, I don't think it's quite that powerful.
yeah, having some more like actual win options is nice. So Hydroform helps out there, but yeah, like it's fine to tutor card draw or like interaction with his card. I do that a lot, but it never feels amazing. Um, if we get a nice like blue instant wizard cycler, that would be pretty nice.
Yeah. I mean, it does let you go get muddled too. It lets you get dizzy spells. So there are tutor chains,
Hmm.
but then those just get expensive quick. So,
Yeah,
uh,
sometimes you gotta do them, and sometimes you can afford to do them. But yeah, they don't feel great.
yeah. It's kind of in that A tier, maybe like almost B tier, but the flexibility gives is kind of pushing it up a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's a card or two away from being an auto include at the same time. So, um,
What else we got for tutors? Shrine Steward.
yeah. So in terms of other tutors, next up we have Shrine Steward. So this is great in our deck, even though it's expensive. Um, what I
Like
mean,
casting it is kind of rough, but like when you're searching a land enchantment in at like worst case scenario and best case you're searching Freed, like you have to play it. I don't know. In my opinion, I think it's S tier. Like any Freed tutor is pretty much guaranteed S tier.
yeah. It gets all that. It can get your if you're playing like a Wind Syndicon or whatever, it's fine. I mean, you can get Urban Burgeoning just to like take you to value down if you need to. So,
Yeah.
and it's regardless of your mana situation, you can cast it, which is neat. It's not taxing on the mana. If you're heavy green, you can go get spend all your green on it. Who cares? Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's really solid. Um, Other tutors we have Step Through and Vidalcan Aether Mage, the Wizard Cyclers. Um, they get land untappers. They get they get Galvanic Alchemist. Um, they can get our Archaeomancer. Um, I mean, and they're at instant speed and effectively uncounterable because they're an ability. They're not casting them. So very, very powerful. Step Through has the added ability of like actually being able to do something where you can bounce, two creatures with it if you have to. Vidalcan Aether Mage. I have used it before to bounce something that's been turned into every creature type, which makes it a sliver, but it's going to come up way less frequently than, just being able to bounce creatures. Um,
Or just a body to block with if you absolutely have to. I've done that too.
yeah.
Um,
So
but
these are the tutor ability of these cards, or the tutor ability on the cards, um, makes these S tier just because we need the redundancy, we need the tutoring for those. And again, it's a tutor for a freed piece basically, and any of those, like that's exactly what the deck is looking for. That's the spot that has the least amount of redundancy in the deck, so we want everything and anything that can do it.
also, like, I don't know about you, but I've had game states where I cycle Step Through for Archaeomancer, and I pick up the Step Through with Archaeomancer,
Yeah,
and then the next turn, I'm like, all right, bounce Archaeomancer and a Dargo. Cast the Archaeomancer, get Step Through back.
yeah,
This
yeah,
is what we're doing now. Every turn, 9 mana, bounce
yeah.
bounce a creature. It feels bad, but
It feels
you
bad except
know,
for when you get to do it and it's happening, then it feels great because
yeah, when it's working, it's great.
yeah,
But
it's just good clean
yeah,
magic.
good fair magic. Are there any we missed? I guess we
Yeah,
missed the basic land cyclers like generous. They're not even basic anymore.
yeah.
Um,
Those are fine. I mean, we talked about Lauren revealed already. Um, it's obviously way better than Generosint in terms of the spell side and what we're doing. And there's not any like, yeah, it's cool
and
to get our
islands
dual
are way
lands.
better
Yeah,
than
but Mystic
Lawrence.
Sanctuary is way cooler than Gingerbread Cabin, and we're not playing Gingerbread Cabin, so yeah, Generosint is kind of in that D tier. It's probably not worth playing. Maybe if you're like in the crazy version that doesn't run island, like basic islands, like we made, maybe. But
Yeah,
otherwise,
then you need to search your dual lands, but yeah, otherwise wouldn't play the
yeah.
forest cyclers.
And then there's like Into the North and Spoils of Victory. These go tutor up your dual lands. Spoils can tutor up Mystic Sanctuary and put it into play untapped, which is notable. they're fine. They're 2 mana ramp spell, or Into the North's a 2 mana ramp spell. You can talk about the other Nature's
Yeah,
Lore and
Farseek's
Co. and
2 mana.
yeah, all of
That's a
those, but they're not the most exciting. They're kind of in that like C tier where it's like if you want to run that ramp package, you can, but it comes at the cost of something else. So I'm not excited about any of these anymore. Um,
Yeah, used to play them. I don't think they're amazing now, but they're still playable if you really want to.
yeah. And then the only other tutor we had that we hadn't talked about yet was Trinket Mage, and this is kind of in that tech category too, where you can run packages that let you do some cool stuff with Trinket Mage. We talked about Lifespark Spellbomb. You can run Expedition Map, which I guess we didn't talk about here, which is a land tutor. So it's kind of in that same vein of finding anything. So it's kind of like a tutor for a tutor or a tutor for a tech piece. But it's not tutoring for
Playable
anything
bridge
backbreaking. Yeah.
for an indestructible land can come up, especially if you're doing the land animation win lines.
Yeah.
That's nice, but
Yeah. And it is a wizard. So there's some cool stuff you can do with it. But again, it's not like an auto include. But you can build around it and, increase its value in the deck for sure.
yeah, I think a lot of the tutors are in like the C tier if they're not searching like your win conditions. It's like,
Yeah.
well, they're playable, they can do cool things, but they're not insane.
Yeah. But yeah, next up, Elvish Mystic, and Llanowar Elf,
And
Finhorn
go.
Elves, all the mana dorks in general that aren't land untappers. I don't like them. I don't think you like them either.
No, not at all. I
Um,
think they're awful.
yeah, I've seen the list. They try to do this thing, and they're more turbo-y, and that's fine. They're not. They're not. A 1 mana ramp spell is never going to be that bad, but it's just not really in line of in the. It doesn't really align with the other things we're doing. Yeah, it's making mana, but a land untapper is going to generate more value over the course of the game. These are 1 mana, so they're cool in that regard, but that extra 1 mana versus, an untapper on turn 2, like, the untapper is just so much better every single time. So,
Yeah, they enable dropping your 3 mana plays on turn 2 a bit more consistently, but the main issue I have with them is that they're all green and only produce green. Unless
yeah.
you're gonna pay more mana, in which case just play on tappers. But like we mentioned earlier with the land enchantments, the deck is fairly blue pip heavy a lot of the time, especially since a lot of your ramp cost green. Once you've ramped once, you're fine on green. It's the blue that really becomes an issue.
Yeah.
Um, so only producing green is just a really big no for me. I don't like them.
I think that's fair. So, yeah, I'm not excited about them either. So they're kind of in C or D. I mean, even D tier, honestly. Um,
Yeah, I just
yeah.
think we have better things to be doing.
Yeah. Next up, we can talk about the Moonfolk packages. So there's just the various Moonfolk. So we already talked about Oboro Breeze Caller. It's insane. But there are a few other Moonfolk that let you do things by returning lands. There's Floodbringer, which lets you return a land to tap a land. There's Soratomi Cloudskater, which lets you return a land to draw a card and discard. And there's Rainshaper, which is you return a land to give a creature you control Shroud. Um,
Notably, the Floodbringer and Cloudskater, the looter and the land tapper, are both 2 drops that cost 2 to activate.
yeah.
Whereas the Rainshaper is a 3 drop that costs 3 to activate.
Yeah, and the Rainshaper and Floodbringer are wizards for tutor ability purposes, but overall, these are kind of just all right. I mean, the Floodbringer tapping lands, we don't really care about that, and we aren't really doing too much with like just returning lands to play to get them back in to play with Gretchen's ability. So this one's kind of in D tier. I don't think we really need that effect. Cloudskater and Rainshaper have actual abilities that we can make some use of. Card filtering on Cloudskater, it's not the worst. And the giving Shroud through Rainshaper is also not terrible, but it is pretty costly for that effect. And can kind of mess up what we want to do with our combo, so we have to be careful about it. Um, so I think if I was going to play any of these, I'd play Cloud Skater first, and I'd have it in that kind of tech C tier category. But I think Floodbringer is probably a no go, and probably in D tier, and Sword Tommy Rainchipper is probably in that tier as well.
Yeah, Floodbringer's like so the reason you would play Floodbringer is if it's like a really control heavy meta, I guess. And you just go like cast Floodbringer on your turn before you're gonna try to combo, and then during the end step before your turn, you try to tap down the control deck's lands. Um, so that going into your turn, you're not getting interacted with.
But
But
even that seems
yeah,
like
I don't
a
know. I'd
stretch.
rather just activate Gretchen one or two more times and try to draw interaction, I think.
Yeah.
So,
I think overall it's going to have more success than the alternative. Um, but yeah. So
yeah.
Moonfolk, they are neat though, and I think it's cool to talk about
They're
them.
cool. They're like a Gretchen specific thing that's really cool because you aren't impacted by bouncing land as much as most other decks. But they're still pretty whatever.
Yeah. Um, Next up, we have Gift of the Viper. A 1 mana green instant puts a +1/+1 counter on a creature, gives it a reach counter, gives it a death touch counter, and untaps it. So it does a lot for a single green mana. Um, Plays nice with Vision Graph Mage. Turns Gretchen into a blocker that actually kills things, with the death touch and the added power. You can untap and untap her to generate a little bit more extra mana or to activate it in response to something. This card does a lot for 1 mana.
Yeah.
I think I've undervalued it for a long time. I haven't personally played with it yet. I think it's pretty solid though.
Yeah, I haven't played with it either, actually, but I do think it's like it does a lot of small things really well. So I think it's definitely like C tier. Um, it's not like insane value or anything, so it probably belongs a bit more in the turbo builds than in the generic value kind of builds. Um, but most of the graph mage builds tend to be a bit more turbo leaning anyways, so it probably just sees play there in the first place.
Yeah, I think C
Um,
is a good spot for it, but it's a card that I wouldn't be surprised that if I started playing it, I would probably think about moving up higher in the tier
yeah,
list.
it seems like it has potential. It just doesn't do everything. It
Yeah,
does a lot of small things in a, a one mana
yeah,
card, which is nice.
yeah. So yeah, it's a C tier. Lowest pedal. While on the topic of turbo, what better card to talk about? I hate Lotus Petal.
I think it's probably worse than the mana dorks, which is funny.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I don't like Lotus Petal in a lot of PDH in general because I don't think we have the ways to take advantage of it the same way like cDH does, or eternal formats with rares. Um, but yeah, I mean, if you're doing the turbo thing, yeah, you can land an earlier, land or a land on tapper and be that much closer to winning. But uh, this, Gretchen builds in general are built to like be more like, yeah, you can win early, but you're gonna crush in the late game. And Lotus Petal in the mid to late game is a terrible draw, and I hate drawing it. I hate seeing it. So I don't think it's
Yeah.
really the deck for it, and I think I have it in D tier.
Yeah, in the early game, it's a nice little boost, but like we don't care that much. And in the late game, it's way worse than drawing a land.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, D tier for me.
yeah. Next up,
Not D tier though.
yeah, we talked about Merch Skull. We talked about Mnemonic Wall Moments piece. Um, yeah, this card's great.
Yeah, I still hate like having to play it because it is just a fog. Um, it also only prevents combat damage, so it doesn't stop like pinger decks. which is annoying. But when this card is good, it is game winning.
Yeah.
It's 2 mana, so you can search it off Muddle, which comes up. Um, yeah, I mean, getting 2 uses out of it is really nice. Uh, it it wins games.
Yeah, it can be a time walk. Sometimes it can be 2 time walks. Like, it's it's just so good. Yeah, it's not like it's never super exciting to see in your opening hand. You're never excited to draw it, but then when it does come in clutch, you're like, this is the best card. It's kind of in that. It's as much as it's strong, it's still probably in like that B tier, because you'll have pods where it does actual nothing. Um,
Yeah, like it literally does nothing at a combo pod.
yeah.
But
Uh,
I think it's the best fog. Generally, I think you need to play one fog slash life gain card
yeah.
in Gretchen, and I think this is my choice.
Yeah.
Um,
And the other, the other two, just while we're talking about them, Tangle, another 2 mana fog that prevents the attackers from untapping the next turn. So it buys you a turn, which is sometimes cool unless you're dealing with vigilance or people have ways to untap
yeah,
creatures. So there are ways around it. And then Weather the Storm, which is a gain life. So it's a little different than the fogs, but it gains 3 life with Storm. The issue here is it's hard to get the storm count high when you need it to be high. um, so you have to like sometimes pick inopportune times to like go for the weather of the storm instead of holding out on it. Um, or you just never get a good turn to go for it, and it's fairly underwhelming at just like 3 or 6 life. But
I
it
mean,
can,
it comes up. Usually, I gain like 9 life off of it, um, which is good. Um, but whenever you start getting to the point of gaining like 15 life, because so like usually when I play this card, I go for a combo attempt. So I play 1 or 2 cards, interaction, interaction for me, interaction from them. I'm stopped. Weather the storm for 21, and then they go, uh, that guy is a threat. Let's kill him. And then they just punch me to death anyways because I gained life, and apparently that's a problem after I lost my entire board state. Um, so I think people's threat assessment gets skewed by Weather the Storm for some reason.
yeah.
Um, I don't know. Combat players or something. But but and then like Moments Piece, you'll cast Moments Piece, and then they won't swing into you for like 3 turns because they're
Yeah.
like, oh, but he can flash it back. It's like, well, you're only winning the game if you force me to flash it back. So I
Yeah.
don't know why you're not swinging into me, but
I'll take it.
sometimes you get insane value off of that.
Yeah. So yeah, those are like the cards that help us stay alive. Uh, and yeah, like you said, I think I only run Moments Piece right now. You
Yeah,
really want
I
one, maybe two, but going too far over that, you just run the risk of drawing it in a game where it does nothing and feeling really bad about it. So
yeah, I used to be on 2. I was on Moments Piece and Weather the Storm. I think I'm just down to Moments Piece now.
yeah. So yeah, Moments Piece, kind of in B tier, Tangle, and Weather the Storm C, kind of.
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
agree.
yeah. Mystic Sanctuary, one of the coolest lands, I think, if not the coolest land that was printed in the common
Yeah, no,
rarity.
absolutely, easily.
It's cool. It gives us a unique effect. It enables some combo lines. Some of the more weird, and tricky combo lines with the deck. If things start going sideways, that you don't really need, but they're nice to have with the ability to bounce it back to your hand and put it into play with Gretchen, over and over again and get value that way. Um,
Yeah, and the mid-game value lines where, like we talked about previously, Tragic Lesson, bouncing Mystic Sanctuary, putting it back into play, picking up your Tragic Lesson, looping random cards that bounce islands comes up in the value game, and yeah, it does enable some infinite lines that are janky, but it enables them.
yeah, there's no reason not to run it in our deck that's running so many islands already, and the value it gives. it's just a really good card. It's probably gonna go in every build of this. I guess it's more of an A tier card. You don't. It's not necessary, right? But
I've considered cutting it from time to time just because of like the game states where it does come in tapped in the early game.
yeah,
Like it does have times where it comes in tapped, and it makes me kind of wish I was just playing an island.
yeah,
Um, but you're still probably playing it. But I think it is possible to cut Mystic Sanctuary, which feels insane to say.
yeah.
But
It's just a card that adds a lot, low opportunity cost in general. But when we are trying to
still a
develop
cost.
early, yeah, like it comes up. So, um, speaking of tap lands, we can talk about Path of Ancestry too. Um, Effectively a dual land without the dual land typing, which our deck does unfortunately care about. So, um, but we play you know, lots of druids in our halfling druid helm deck. So we will get the value off of it with all of our untappers. We won't play any halflings, but um, I mean,
Yeah,
again,
Scry is nice when you have card draw on your commander.
yeah,
Uh,
low. Another example, just like low opportunity cost. It'll screw you up in the early game sometimes, or like, but if you get it turn one, it's like a great turn one land, um, and you'll get even just a little bit of extra value out of it is pretty sick. So
yeah, I like Path. I think I played in pretty much every build, so I think it's like an A tier for me.
yeah,
But I can understand not playing it if you really want to cut down on that tapped land count. But
yeah,
I think it's good.
yeah. Next up, recursion in the form of reclaim, and we can talk about salvage, which is the sorcery speed version of reclaim, and then we can talk about like revive the Shire and season of renewal a little bit too. So
Yeah,
um, yeah, just like recursion in general in this deck. So we don't have a lot of it, and the pieces we want to recur are kind of all over the place in terms of the type of card they are. Sometimes we want to return an enchantment, sometimes it's a creature. Here and there, it's a spell. But more often than not, we want like if we're recurring a combo piece that's been stopped is awesome. Um, and
yeah.
so
Putting step through back on top of the deck
yeah,
is nice.
yeah.
Um,
So
Stuff like that.
yeah, so reclaim does the best I think of any of these options because it puts it on top of our deck. It does it at instant speed, and with Gretchen we can draw that card at instant speed too. So we can buy back just about anything, which comes up in counter fight. I've had counter fights where I've been able to like let some counter resolve, put the spell back on top of my deck, draw it, and do it again. Like there's just so many applications for this, so it's really cool. Salvage does the same thing, but it does it sorcery speed, so you lose some of that, like the cool play you can do there in response to the things. But 1 mana is hard to beat. You can't do it before your draw step to like make sure you draw the piece that's in your yard,
Yeah, that's the big issue
which
with it.
is reclaims.
It comes up a lot that it's not instant speed,
Yeah,
which is sad.
yeah. So of those two, reclaim is probably. I mean, I think it's S tier, and then salvage I think
Yeah,
is
I would agree.
D. I think salvage is D tier. Maybe C. Maybe you can play it, but I'm not excited about it.
Yeah, no, it's insane how much the instant speed matters.
Yeah.
And
Um,
like you're always playing reclaim over salvage.
yeah.
So do you need the second copy?
Yeah.
Is the other question there.
Yeah.
That is so much worse.
But then looking at the other recursion options, revive the Shire. It's 2 mana. Let's return any permanent to your hand. Makes a food, so it gives you a little bit of life gain, which is something our deck never hates. And 2 mana to return any permanent is pretty good rate. It's returning probably a freed more often than not. Maybe a tutor or an untapper if things are going really sideways. But um,
Yeah,
just
or if you're a more turbo build, like you just bring back the one untapper you've seen because you're sitting on a freed in hand.
yeah. And
Um,
then season renewal returns either a creature or an enchantment or both from your graveyard to your hand for 3 mana and instant speed. So more costly, but can be a twofer, which is cool. But
Yeah,
again, just kind of I'm not super excited about these recursion spells in general. I'm of the opinion that I'd rather just be trying to draw more ways to protect my win attempts rather than trying to rebuy old ones.
I agree. I think there's also enough redundancy in our deck now that I'd rather just find a different land untapper or whatever I'm trying to revive than try to find a recursion spell
Yeah,
and invest extra mana to get it back. I'd rather just find another copy.
yeah.
Um,
So I think I like Revive the Shard more than Season of Renewal in that regard. It's more flexible. We could get if you're running the artifacts, you can get the artifacts back. It can buy back your Mystic Sanctuary if something happened to it or whatever. But and it's cheaper.
yeah,
But
I agree.
so I think Revive Shard is maybe in like B tier. It's pretty strong, but Season is more in like the C, like really tech options and maybe the one thing to talk about with these two cards specifically and salvage too, maybe if you're running the look at the top five, put the rest, pick one, put the rest in your graveyard spells, the value on these goes up a lot. um,
Hmm.
but that's getting into like a kind of the more uncommon variants of the deck. um,
Yeah,
but they have a better home there.
yeah. The more green heavy versions of the deck, um, they gain value, but
Yeah.
in the current popular builds, not the greatest.
But yeah, and then Rhinewood Falls. I don't know if we really need to spend too long here. We talked about it already and why snow is so important to the deck, and that's why this was here, just to really stress that this is a deck that
Yeah,
needs snowlands. Um, we have a snow duel, which is nice. We have untappers that care about snow. Um, you can still play the other non-snow dual land if you want. Some people do, some people don't. I don't think it makes that big of a difference. But having all of your basics be snow is so crucial for this deck, and so that makes Rhinewood Falls like the probably one of the best lands in the deck. If you get it early,
yeah,
it's one of the best one. It's definitely the best one to suit up, I think.
yeah, yeah. Searchable. It's a forest, so you can actually put Utopia on it. Uh, and it's an island, so high tide works. Like, and it's a snow. It's premium, non-basic land for this deck.
Yeah.
Uh,
So yeah. Moving on down here. So we talked about a lot of these. I think next up is Strider
yeah,
Harness.
yeah. The
Um,
harness.
yeah. So this kind of is in line with Life Spark, Spellbomb, Hydroform, Harmonious Emergence, kind of those land animators we talked about earlier. So this is an answer to the summoning sickness problem. And
Yeah. Uh, it's so there are different versions of this card at different mana values and equip costs. Generally, it's going to cost you 4 mana total for your first instance, no matter what. So it's going to be 3 drop with equipped 1, 2 drop equipped 2, or 1 drop equipped 3. Um, I think Strider Harness is the best because the +1/+1 comes up in really weird game states if you need to block with Gretchen. That part matters. It helps bring certain untappers out of bolt range, yada yada, all that stuff. And I like the 3 mana casting cost with the 1 mana equip because there are also game states where you have like 2, 3 untappers in hand and a land that taps for 2+, or like, I guess it depends on the mana cost of the creatures. But if you have a land that taps for like 4 or 5, there are game states where you go, all right, untapper, equip, untap the land. Untapper, equip, untap the land. Untapper, equip, untap the land. Um, and those matter, but more often than not, it's just a haste enabler.
yeah,
Um, and it's good. Uh, Having a permanent way to solve the summoning sickness issue repeatedly is nice. For like the really grindy Gretchen builds. I think I've moved away from it as the meta speeds up. But if the meta starts slowing down again, I think Strider Harness is a strong option.
Yeah. I mean I played it for a while. I've also moved away from it. But it's really I mean, it's of the things that repeatedly give haste, it's the best of what we got. So it's kind of in that like B tier, I guess, where it's like the best of those options. But
Yeah,
you
like
have the
it's
choice
good.
of if that's what you want to do versus the land animator thing.
Yeah, yeah, it's an option. I think it's still a strong option, but maybe not a necessary option.
Yeah. Um, Next up, Tangle Pool Bridge. I don't think either of us have really played this card much. Um,
I played it a little bit whenever it came out, and I was still on Trinket Mage, but I
yeah,
cut Trinket Mage soon after.
yeah,
It didn't feel worth it because I wasn't playing land animators at the time. I think if you're playing land animators, then maybe it's worth playing. But even then, it's like fine.
yeah.
Um,
It's it's indestructible. It's durable. It taps for both colors, so it's cool in all those regards. It's not a snowland, so it's rough to suit up if you have the snowland. It's not a forest, so if you have Arbor Elf, it's rough. So it has some downside, um, but it's good if in like a removal heavy metas. It doesn't dodge, bounce removal, so there's still plenty of vulnerability, but it is something, right? It adds a little bit there. I don't think I'm playing it right now. I think if I play Trinket Mage, it's like close to free to include, or at least worth including for the low cost of what you're sacrificing for it. But yeah, it's not like crazy
yeah,
crazy
I
one
could
way or the other.
I could see maybe replacing like Path of Ancestry or something if
Yeah,
you're playing a Trinket Mage package.
yeah. But I think it's kind of that C tier. A tech
Yeah.
option definitely has merit and definitely like has some good uses. Um,
Last miscellaneous card.
Last miscellaneous and best miscellaneous card, urban
Well,
burgeoning. I mean,
best.
it's up there.
It's up there. It's pretty good.
This is about as close as we can get to Seedborn Muse in PDH.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I tell people every time I cast this and they go, I've never seen this card in my life. I'm like, oh, it's a one land Seedborn Muse.
yeah. It's pretty great. Yeah, so it untaps a land every upkeep, or sorry, every untap step. So every person's turn, which is great when you have a land that taps for a few mana and you can just get an extra Gretchen activation going every turn. Similar to what Querying Ranger's trying to do. It's just trying to get you extra Gretchen activations, so you just like snowball in terms of resource advantage. This one doesn't even cost you a land returning to your hand. It just lets you do it every turn. So
Yeah, it doesn't cost that. Doesn't require an untapper to be in play. It's an aura, so it's searchable.
yeah,
Uh, this card's insane.
yeah,
Even if you're putting it on a land that doesn't tap for more mana, if you put this on a forest, that is 3 extra mana per turn cycle, assuming you have ways to use it every turn. Um, and that adds up a lot in this kind of deck where we're trying to interact with people and activate Gretchen. Like, it's good.
yeah. I love this card. Getting it early feels great. Getting it mid game feels great. Getting it late game feels great. It's just always good. So,
Getting it
uh,
late game feels broken.
yeah,
Because
easy,
you're, yeah,
easily in the S tier, and there's no reason not to run it. So,
agreed.
but yeah, wrapping as we kind of round the corner here and get towards the end. Win cons. Um, we've talked about all these along the way, so now we can hit them head on. So, first
Well,
up,
not all
yeah,
of them.
they've all come up. Most of them have come up at some point or another, I guess. But first up, capsize. This one, not necessarily a win con on its own, but does
Ineffectively
enough
is.
that it basically is. So it bounces everyone else's stuff to make sure once you've gone infinite, you're good. It bounces your Archaeomancer or some of your ways to win and lets you replay them over and over again as a as a way to win the game. In a pinch, it's just removal and interaction in the mid to late game. Um, Repeatable interaction if you have tons of mana going. Um, I mean, it's a card that's been good in PDH for so long. It's always going to be good. Buyback is a messed up mechanic. Bouncing any permanent is a messed up ability. Like, it's just insane.
Yeah, no, capsize easy S tier.
Yeah,
Card's insane.
yeah. Compulsive research, deep analysis.
We
These
already
are
talked about these being
yeah,
win cons.
yeah. We talked about that in the card advantage section. So these win the game, and they're solid. Otherwise, is just draw spells. Um, Find the path we talked about in the land aura section too. Kind of more on the underwhelming side of things, but it is a win con there. Same with Lush Oasis, kind of still on that kind of like techie side of things where it's not going to come up a lot, but again, it does win you the game. We talked about Mystic Sanctuary as well, where it helps enable some ways to win the game with recurring spells and things. Um, but
Yeah,
then,
these last two I think are the ones we
yeah,
need to actually talk about.
these are the
Uh,
unique ones for sure. And I'll let you hinted at Secret Door earlier, so
yeah,
talk us through it.
yeah. So Secret Door is a 1 mana artifact creature that's an 0/4 defender. So it's a good blocker at 1 mana. It's an artifact creature that is 1 CMC, so it's searchable with Trinket Mage. Um, and you can pay 4 and a blue to venture as a sorcery speed ability. The sorcery speed sucks. It does come up. It means you can't just cast this when you have infinite mana and get a guaranteed win, because after you activate it, they can kill it in response, and you can't just activate it again. So that part does suck. And we just have so many other ways to win the game through cards that are like actually good cards, like Capsize and Compulsive Research, all that stuff. That like a 1 mana 0/4 blocker just doesn't seem good enough for me to justify playing this over other win conditions. This is just kind of a dedicated win con card.
Yeah,
And
it'd
we
be
don't have stacked pieces in the
yeah.
format.
That's what I was gonna
Uh,
get to. If we had things where we actually had to worry about our spell casts and things, it would be one thing. It would maybe merit a little more consideration. But we don't really have many things that is gonna
we
punish
have
us or
a
lock us
commander,
out.
yeah, like we have a rule of law in the command zone that doesn't really see play. So I'm not going to play around it. Um, and even if that commander was popular, Gretchen has a good matchup into that commander because we have our activated ability that
Yeah.
gives us card advantage to find outs.
Yeah.
Um, and we can just present outs like turn after turn after turn during the turn cycle.
Yeah, and
Um,
we can spread those out. We can play a spell bomb, sit on it, and pop it before we need to, and then defend it too with a counter spell or something if they try to do something to stop it. So
yeah, so some people will tell you that stacks is real in the format, but it's not. Uh, we don't have stacks pieces. This card just doesn't make the cut right now. If we get Rule of Law downshifted to a common, um, and some other like actual stacks pieces, then maybe I'd start considering this.
yeah,
But for now, I don't think it's playable.
yeah. And then last up, Stream of Thought. So kind of another card where it it's like Find the Path or Lush Oasis, where yeah, like it does a little bit outside of just comboing, but not really. Like it lets you put 4 cards back in or someone's 4 cards back into their library, whether it's yours or someone else's. So it's somewhat recursion for you or somewhat graveyard hate against someone else.
No,
Or,
this
or
isn't
no, no,
Grave
sorry,
Hate.
sorry. This
It
is one
mills.
that just mills and it returns your stuff. So it's not even grave hate. It's just recursion for you. Um, so it's not that great as recursion. Um, we don't really
If it was
need that.
instant, maybe. Maybe.
Yeah, but it's putting it back in the deck. So you still have to go find whatever you're recurring. Um, But yeah, I mean, it's a way it wins the game on the spot for the most part. I guess you mill everyone, then you have to find a way to make them all draw. So there's a delay, in
I mean,
turns.
do you like
I mean,
you
it
can
depends,
probably
right?
pass
Right.
the turn?
Yeah, it just depends. Like there are the situations where you get to time and you want to like if you don't have a way to win on the spot, you could lose because this is your only win con, which is a big knock against it. Um,
Hmm.
but it's a dedicated win on card that we just don't need in this deck. Like we talked about it, we've said it 100 times when we talked about 100 other cards. But the deck is so good, and the fact that we get to take advantage of like good cards also being win cons, like at the same time, this card just isn't making the cut. I don't think anymore, and um,
Yeah, no.
I just don't.
I
If
don't
the
think
card
it's
isn't
ever
doing
made the
something,
cut.
yeah, if the card isn't doing something meaningful in addition to winning the game for us, I think that trend is just going to continue. Like we just have too many powerful options, and that's a good problem to have. So
Yeah, this card is just for the people who ask, "How does this deck win the game?" Whenever they look at Gretchen and can't understand the win cons. And if you can't, then yeah, this gives you a way to just say, "Guys, the game is over."
yeah,
But you just put in like a little bit of effort, and you're fine. You don't need it.
you know. Um, but yeah, so those are the win cons, um, and kind of the that is our tier list in full. But we did because Dragonstorm just came out. There were two new cards that we thought were worth talking about and quickly touching on too. That I think we're gonna test in some capacity. Um, so we wanted to make sure we include those before we test them and kind of we'll talk about why they're appealing and where they end up in the tier list remains to be seen. But first up is Heritage Reclamation, which is just a buffed Return to Nature, which I can't
Yeah,
believe they printed. So it's literally just the same thing as Return to Nature, except for you can effectively, if you're doing the Graveyard Hate option, you also get to draw a card, but it says exile up to one target card from graveyard. So at worst, it's a cycle for 2 mana. So um, Return to Nature is already really good. It's one of the most flexible interaction pieces. Destroying an artifact or enchantment Naturalize is arguably playable sometimes in some decks. But adding on Graveyard Hate is crucial against a lot of these combo decks that are out there that are running flicker things. So it's just a really solid card, really efficiently costed, um, and probably merits like some consideration. There's also just been an uptick in graveyard decks recently that I think Graveyard Hate is maybe worth exploring a little more than previously. Um, and this replaces itself while stopping some type of graveyard interaction.
yeah. I mean, I think we had Return to Nature in like C tier because it's
Yeah,
fine. And yeah, I mean, I think getting to draw a card out of the mode that you're probably picking more often than not. I think to be on the safe side, I'd probably put this in C tier as well, but I could see it moving up to B tier potentially,
yeah, I
because
think
that
so.
is a big upside.
Yeah, I think it's huge. So, and this will definitely see play in other decks too. So it'll be a
Yeah,
good
for
card,
sure, other decks.
and it happens to be pretty decent against us. So, um, but yeah, sweet card. And then this is the card that I think it's both exciting and not at the same time, and I'm really curious to see how it plays out. Is this Ringing Strike Mastery? So it's a new 1 mana aura. When it enters, you tap the enchanted creature. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step, but that creature has the ability of pay 5 mana to untap it. So this is effectively a way more expensive Freed from the Real in this deck. Um, what are your initial thoughts as we look? I mean, this is the first type of this effect we've gotten in a hot minute, but how are you feeling about this one?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously this is like way worse for trying to combo off, but it is one CMC, which means it's searchable with Dizzy Spell, like we mentioned earlier, which is pretty unique for our untapping effects. We don't have a one CMC option right now, so this makes a Dizzy Spell far more playable. Um, Also, technically, same as freed from the reel, this is removal for beat sticks. Um, Whereas for freed from the reel, we have to invest 1 mana every turn to tap down the creature. This one just taps it down permanently unless our opponents spend 5 to untap their creature. So,
And that,
and it's also 1 mana,
yeah,
so it's like it's good. Uh,
yeah, five mana is steep for combo purposes though. We would need a land that taps for 6 mana. That's a lot. I mean, there are
yeah,
some combo lines that are getting near that in terms of like the minimum, but this is at the highest end of it. So to that end, I'm not super excited about it. But it's a new. It's worth testing because of the other parts. You know, the CMC, the flexibility. Like this will
and it's
get
where we
played.
have least redundancy. So like it might be worth playing, even if we're not excited to play it, just because having another way to untap is nice.
Yeah, I think
Um,
the home I'm most excited for this deck is probably Weavers. Weavers can take
yeah,
advantage
no,
of it a little
this is
more. Um,
way better in Weavers.
yeah, and I'm not even 100% sure it's like an auto include in that deck either because it is still steep. But yeah, it's neat. I'm excited that we're seeing another copy of this effect when we haven't seen them in a while. Um,
Agreed.
so
But yeah, I don't know. Probably like C tier
yeah, I don't
for
think it
now.
I don't think it's a D tier like, but
It does do a thing that we don't have access to many copies of
yeah,
that is required for our deck to win the game. So like it can't be lower than C tier, right?
yeah,
But like
yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I'm skeptical, but
But we'll see. Who
we'll
knows?
try it.
It's definitely better than singing Bell Strike. So, uh,
It's true. We didn't even put that one on here, so
yeah. So there is a threshold where they become not even worth mentioning, but I think this is like toe in that line. So, um, but yeah, so, but yeah, that I think that about does it for us. So,
yeah, I
um,
don't think we missed anything that I want to cover. Um, if the comment section says we're wrong, if there's enough cards that we missed, maybe we'll do a part 3 of random other cards that we apparently missed, like Colossal Dreadmaw.
yeah,
But I think we know we're probably not going to rate them very highly.
it's in the D tier for Dread.
For Dread.
Yeah.
um, Anything else you want to say before we sign off?
No, just like always feel free to reach out to Puzzle and I if you have questions about any of this. Leave comments. We'll have the link to the tier list in the description for you to go check out. You know, they're sorted by tiers and they're sorted by categories too. Um, but yeah, no, play the deck. Ask us questions about the deck. It's sweet. You and I love this deck. You know, I'm always excited to talk about Gretchen, and I'm always excited to
Yeah,
see other people tinker with Gretchen.
yeah, absolutely. Seeing the new iterations on Gretchen pop up every now and then is always a blast. Even if I'm criticizing your deck, uh, I'm still having a blast talking about it,
Yeah,
and I will always be down to help argue about card selection of one card in Gretchen.
yeah, it's fun.
Uh, but yeah, that closes this out for us. Thanks for sitting through 6 hours of this discussion of not even an actual deck. Um, if you have any questions, like Bobby said, feel free to shoot us messages on Discord, in the servers, on the comment section on this video, wherever. Hope you all have a great day. Thank you for joining me, Bobby.
Thank you for having me.
We will see you all next time.